Today's episode is brought to you by Oxenham Group. Disengaged employees cost U.S. companies up to $550 billion per year, and a recent Gallup poll showed that only 33% of the U.S. workforce considers itself engaged. How are you ensuring that the people you hire are engaged? The Oxenham Group is a recruiting company that focuses on why a person takes a job and what makes them stay. They do this by understanding one's motivation, skills, and personal mission. Oxenham's proprietary process focuses on three main areas: sociologist-prepared questions, IBM Prove-It assessments, and Gallup Clifton Strengths. The combined results give the interviewer valuable insight into the potential for close alignment and the likelihood of engagement. Reach out today to learn more about how you can identify highly engaged people and harness the power of alignment with Oxenham Group. For more information, please call 605-610-3026 or visit their website at oxenhamgroup.com. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Canopy Cast. My name is Christopher McGurn with my two co-hosts, John Michael Price and Michael O'Connor. Today we have a very special guest with us, Kyler Miles from Vancouver, Canada, a content creator, a brand strategist, an entrepreneur at heart, and the host of the Making It podcast. Kyler, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Love to be on the show.
Yeah. What we would love to start with, in this podcast is if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing a little bit about your background, where you came from, what you're doing today, and how you got there.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I like to start my journey when I was born. No, I'm just kidding. No, my journey really starts after college. So nothing too fancy. I went to a college in British Columbia called BCIT, and they majored in business management and marketing. And for the longest time, I wanted to be a sales. My father's in sales. Both my parents are entrepreneurs. So I thought, that's the right path. I know sales, you make a lot of money, to attract pretty girls and drive the fast cars and have the nice watches and all that kind of stuff. And I was really into that. And I did it for about 6 or 7 years, bouncing at different companies, startups, large businesses like Salesforce and SAP, to startups locally in the Vancouver area. And throughout those years, I gained a lot of knowledge about business, developing ideas for growing and scaling businesses and technologies and all that kind of stuff. And I later found the love of my life, which is in Montreal, Canada, the opposite side of Vancouver, and had an opportunity to go live with her in Montreal. And at the time, I had some money saved up, and I kind of, was looking for something different. I was looking for something. I was very unhappy in my role. Like, I dreaded going to work on Monday every single week for 5 or 6 years. And I thought that was just normal. And when I first came out to Montreal, she had a digital camera, which is something I've in the back burner always wanted to try. Photography. I just on Instagram, you see all these amazing lives that people are living and these amazing photos with the colors. And I'm like, man, what a life, like travel and taking photos and that seems so cool. And literally moved across the country, quit my job, and just to pursue this passion, this idea that I had. And it was very scary. And I had a lot of family and friends kind of concerned what I was doing, if I gone, nuts for, chasing a girl and chasing my dreams. And, I just had this idea that it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And within 6 months of me kind of learning how to do photography, doing gigs for free, staying up late to do tutorials online on learning, the craft on YouTube. I landed this job that I'm in now, which is a startup here in Montreal. And I ended up managing their whole content production team. So all brand management, the strategy, content production. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. And for the past year, I've been with them and learning my craft and really building my skill set in the creative space. So, a lot of my story is about how I was in this 9-to-5 job, from on paper looking really great, making decent money as a, young 20-year-old and doing quite well, to chase this passion of trying to take photos of people and wind up making a career out of it. And, now I'm lucky to say I make almost amount as money as I used to, but I'm much happier. I love doing what I do every single day. I don't dread Mondays. We all have a bad week here and there, but honestly, it's like where I'm supposed to be. So that's kind of a long answer to how I got here and what I'm all about.
I love it. I think that's fantastic. There's a few things that stood out to me when I was listening there. Just one, I love the idea that you're an entrepreneur at heart. It's very obvious, right? Like you have a good job, good pay, you have it made, but it's not what you want to do. It's not what you're passionate about. And I know for us, the three of us, we're all firm believers that, don't do something you're not passionate about. And so I love the fact that you pursued what you were passionate about, which was the photography and the content production. And as a fellow content creator, the creative, the photographer, the guy behind the camera, like I can appreciate that. Like there's something about it that's super fun. It's unique and it's really powerful. The different experiences that you get to have from it, the
Hmm.
traveling, the people you meet. There's so many awesome things about that. So I think it's fascinating to hear your story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's kind of funny, like thinking back, at, like how much you can learn on your own. Like I went to school, I paid a lot of money to get this education, this fancy education in business management, sales, marketing, and to be honest, like it's helped, but not nearly as much in this last year. I learned everything I learned on YouTube, on Google. Like that's what I say my university degree is from, is literally from
Yes.
YouTube because the amount of information on there is crazy. And like I always say on my podcast, like and it sounds super cheesy, but you can do anything, honestly. And it's like you just have to have that drive and have to have that, courage to take that risk. And everyone's different with different risks with families and situations like mortgages. I was lucky. I didn't have a mortgage. I was not paying rent at my parents' house, so I was saving money. So I was lucky. The risk was very easy for me to take, but I'm still a big believer of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I find that so relatable, the whole YouTube university. I mean, I think I've talked to so many creatives, myself included, that is like the best resource. And that's actually a question I wanted to ask you was who are your favorite people to follow to learn from on YouTube? Like for me, for example, I love Peter McKinnon. Like anytime someone asks me like who should I learn from, like Peter McKinnon. I'm a big advocate for him. Casey Neistat, another one. Who do you like on YouTube? From learning all the content production kind of stuff.
Hmm. Well, as a Canadian, of course, Peter McKinnon, coming from
Yeah,
Toronto, I have to follow him.
I
But
didn't even think of that.
no, it's so true though. Like when you first look up photography and you look up the top videos, he is like probably the number one in that space, right? On YouTube, he grew. He has an incredible story, and yeah, he isn't definitely an idol, and he's a great teacher. I mean, he really does. He has in-depth videos on how to learn just the basics, and he just gets to it, and he does it in an entertaining way. And that's like he also kind of teaches you like that storytelling technique alongside the technical aspects of what you need to learn in photography, in business. I'm also a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk from All Inspiration. And Gary, if you follow him, he talks about like parenting advice, business advice, confidence. Like this guy is an animal, and he's a hustler, he's a grinder. And when I put him, in my ear when I was commuting before COVID, of course, it would just get me super pumped. And he taught me a lot, like in this year, about life in general, about business, and how to not overthink things, and how to try to not be a perfectionist, because that is still something that as a creative I think we really struggle with, is trying to be perfect, trying to have the best. But the thing is, what I know today is going to be the best that I can do, and what I know tomorrow will be the best I can do. And I don't know what I'm going to learn 3 months down the line. I could learn something that could have bettered my project today.
Yeah. And you know what? That actually raises a question, another question for you. As a creative, one who loves to create a bunch of different videos and animations, etc., what are your thoughts on Gary Vee's, statement, his theme of document, don't create? What are your thoughts on that as a creative?
It's hard to to implement, but it's so true. Like
Yeah.
the amount of nights and recently that I've spent just trying to like sit down and think about what should I create, what will people like to see, what will get views. You get in that mindset. You're like, oh, and then it like you're digging yourself into this big hole where you start creating for others and not yourself. And when I first started creating, you don't really care about, well, I didn't care about what people thought. I knew I was going to suck, but I just wanted to do it for myself. And so it was that thing that Gary talks about, don't overthink it, right? And that's the whole concept. Like when you're making content like this right now, we're just talking, we're recording a conversation. We could easily just have this conversation without recording and then wind up, well, how are we going to make more content? Well, this is content right now. We're documenting
Exactly.
conversation. We're documenting, advice that 3-4 creatives have for other entrepreneurs out there who want to get in that space or who want to hire a creative, and what is that like, and all sorts of stuff. So it's hard to do. It's very, very hard, but such a great strategy. I know the more times I don't think I just turn on the camera is where those gold nuggets are. And the best pieces of content I've ever created are when my boss is just walking and having a nice conversation. I just capture on camera, no plan, no action, no proper lighting, just me and the camera shaking. And yet it's the best. That's kind of like my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's really true. And you're kind of hopping on the Gary Vaynerchuk train. He's a huge advocate, for empathy, as well as building the culture for your employees, and happiness and the day-to-day work-life balance and all that stuff. And he's a huge advocate for that. And something that I wanted to ask you specifically is, as a creative who's also an entrepreneur starting your own businesses, what do you see in company culture that is really important to pull in, especially for startups? Because I think, for business-minded people, that aren't tagged as creatives, the CEOs, the CFOs, they're creative in their own way, but not necessarily video photography, in the way that creatives are, especially graphic design and stuff. What's important for the culture for you to bring in that's going to help those creatives thrive in that environment that other people might not necessarily think of?
That's a good question. What I'll speak from experience. So I've had jobs where I've been very micromanaged, they're on my shoulder, and I'm stressed out all the time. And when I first started the job I'm in now, which is a creative specialist, I had no direction. They hired me to develop their creative strategy, to boost their content, to like scale basically all their marketing, right? And so the autonomy he gave me to be and try different things, I think that was a really important milestone, at least in my creative journey, was he let me be creative. So that culture of being, hey, listen, I'm going to let you do your thing. I'll give you some help, around logistics of the brand, the colors, yada, yada, yada. But he let me be my authentic self. And some companies I've been to, because I've been to many different startups and large businesses, and there's pros and cons to each, right? But sometimes they've put you in a box and you can't really edge yourself out. And people are not like, it's like finding a niche. Like, you're not just into fishing, you're into basketball, you're into, I don't know, race car driving, and you're into all these different things. We're multi-dimensional people, and people have different skill sets. So although my job as a creative, guess what? He let me also dip into audio engineering and dip into other types of creative fields like design. Like I got into photography, and then I got into video, and then I got into graphic design. Now I'm learning how to make a website. Like, it's so, it seeps into different things. So that autonomy to not put myself in a box that, okay, I'm the photographer, I can't do anything else, was huge for me personally. And I don't own a business like that has 45 people. I just own, myself, a solopreneur, and the company I work for. But that is something I've noticed that I really enjoyed and really liked, that the style and the culture that I'm a part of is that autonomy, that growth. And yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was really good insight. And I think, that's really true too for a lot of people. Being able to give them autonomy and, ownership over projects is really important, especially if you're wanting to build a growth oriented and leadership driven business instead of, like having bosses and managers. I think, that's really important to have that aspect there. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Just to quickly add to, like, when you're hiring a photographer or a videographer, a lot of times the client will have a lot of specifics that they want. I want it like this color, I want it like this specs, I want it this thing. And that boxing that person in, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, right? Because there's situations and industries that require those things. And, you do have a vision, it's your business. So of course you want to paint that vision. But a lot of the times they're either asking for a way too much or not giving enough, and you're limiting that person, that creative, to be their best and show their best creative work for you, right? And so it can be tough. It's a really fine line to walk on, and it's very easy to teeter totter. So yeah, it's a great question, honestly, and until now I haven't even thought about it. So
Yeah. And to go off of that, something I like to say, I find it very interesting. I see it as a contradiction, to be honest, is that people, when they're looking to hire a creative, whether it's a videographer, a photographer, whatever, when people are looking to hire a creative, they're looking to hire someone who thinks outside the box, but at the same time, they're trying to put that person in a box. And I find that
yeah,
very ironic. I'm like, why are you trying to put this person who's thinking outside the box in a box? That makes no sense.
yeah.
And, this reminds me of something that Michael and I have talked about, in our previous podcast, of ceilings and walls. Mike, do you want to elaborate, what we mean by that? Like the ceilings and walls that companies put on their employees, and just kind of like the thought behind that.
Yeah, sure. And I think just real quick on your point, Kyler, I think that in order to have really powerful, successful creative juices, like, human beings just need to be able to express themselves and experiment and try new things, like you were saying, how, having the ability to try and maybe fail at things and learn from that and grow from that and continue to exercise that kind of creative capacity is so crucial. And getting to what you're saying, Chris, we had a great discussion about how so many companies out there will essentially create these barriers for their employees, whether it's vertical, the ceilings of, you'll climb the corporate ladder, you'll never get to this position unless XYZ happens.
Hmm.
You'll never get up, or, these kind of ceilings that are created, or these horizontal walls where, if you're hired for a sales job and you are like, I really want to explore creative stuff, can I move around in the company? It's so rare to find
Hmm.
companies across industries that kind of allow that movement, that creative freedom
Yeah.
of the person in an organization. And I think it's a real tragedy, because I think it stifles that creative ability, that creative process, when you have those barriers on both the vertical and the horizontal zones. I mean, like you were saying, like being able to, you're coming in as photography, videography, being able to experiment with audio visual,
Hmm.
with graphic design, with websites, like the potential is so big. I think it's so common, though, to have those walls and ceilings
So
that you're
common,
talking
so
about.
common. I mean, like any corporate job, any big company, you're going to face that, right? And that's a pro for startups, that you kind of have that, you can have that one-on-one conversation with the founder of the business, right? In a startup, in a 40 person or under 100 employees at least, right? You have that personal relationship. And that's another thing. When you're hiring someone that's a little bit younger, that's early in their career, they're going to be shifting gears. They're going to be discovering more things about themselves. And so, as a business owner, I would recommend, when you're hiring a creative, and if they are younger, be adaptive. Like, none of us thought this COVID would happen. We had to change, and that change helps us grow. And let that person, like you said, go past. Don't let them limit them with the ceilings and the walls. Like, let them break out, and be different and be unique. So I find that so cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going off that, it kind of brought an interesting question to my mind. A lot of, every creative out there hits their creative blocks. And, you'll get in that place where you're like, oh, like I really want to do something, but it's so hard to like either think of new content or just make progress on your current project, whatever that is. What are some things for you specifically that you kind of have noticed are the causes of creative blocks? And what's your process of getting around those? I know a lot of people in that startup phase, like you're saying, are people who are shifting gears in their career or trying to navigate their way around those creative blocks and get better at going through that. So, I think, that'd be a good thing that you could kind of offer some advice on.
Sure. Another great question. I think for me, it's judgment. Judgment of what people are going to think of my video, of my photo, stops me from being creative. Like the ultimate ruts I've ever had, and I'm still having them. It's not going to stop. You're always going to have ruts. But when I really look back and I say, man, why can't I? It's been 2 weeks. I haven't taken a single photo, or I haven't gone out, and it's because I'm fearful of what people are going to think of my work. And having that real conversation with yourself and not caring what Fat Boy 22 says on your Instagram post is really you know what I mean? Like, who cares? Right. And so that is the biggest, I think, barrier for creatives and anyone in this space, right? Think about it. Like, entrepreneurs, they make businesses, they are creative, they make things. And if they are stuck and they're not sure, like, at least from my experience, it's because I'm worried what others are going to think. Others meaning social media, friends and family, community, whatever that might be. And how I come over that fear is, number one, having that conversation with yourself, having a conversation with yourself that, what, like, if someone were to write a bad comment on my YouTube channel, on my podcast, on my photo, they're not in a good place. Because if they take the time to consume your content and then go ahead and say you suck, like, they're in a bad spot in their life, right? Number two, once you have the conversation yourself, that it's okay, because you're not gonna appeal to everyone in your audience. Like, that we all have different interests, we all nerd out different things. Like, my friends are really into race car driving, I have no interest in that. So not that I'm gonna spew hate, but I'm just not gonna really engage with your content because it's not of interest to me, right? So, and that's okay, it's not a bad thing. And maybe a third thing is to get over that rut of you're stuck and you're not sure what to create. I find working on an old project really helps me get in that creative space. I may not finish that project. Like, I always have these, like, kind of back burner projects. My front burner of the stove in this analogy is the current projects I'm working on that need immediate attention. My back burner are kind of like, things I'm continuously working on. And I'll dip into that, just edit a couple things, work on a couple photos, and you'll start to see that your ideas start to flow from that. So really, it's just starting. Like, when you're stuck creating, it's just starting, whether that's drawing, whether that's editing an old project, whether that's, diving into web design, whatever kind of creative space you are. It's just, you just have to start. And honestly, it's the hardest thing. But, like, if for me, I just went outside and just started taking photos, and some of them turned out great, some of them didn't. And then they didn't make the cut of social media. So it's, yeah, you just got to start, and you can't fear judgment.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that I've heard so many times from different people, content creators, influencers on social media, everyone says the same thing. It's two things. It's just turn the camera on and start recording and show up. That's what everyone says. It's making the content very simple, just start, and then stay consistent and keep showing up. Like, everyone says the same thing, but I think it's so true. I think there's a reality.
It's really cool. There's a trend going on that I see in my following. Like, people are editing each other's photos and video to get a different perspective, right? So if you're stuck, and if you know someone in the space, or you want to get to know somebody, that is a current trend. A lot of people are doing it. I see it all over YouTube, all over my Instagram. And I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but people are editing other creators' work, and you see from a different perspective. Wow, like, I didn't think of that. And you learn through other people, right? This is not a competition. We're collaborating, we're sharing our knowledge. I gained this knowledge through others. This is not original thoughts. These are all instilled from me studying and watching YouTube clips. day in and day out every single day and listening to podcasts, like it's that continuous learning, right? So yeah, it's exactly to what you said, right? It's, you got to turn it on and and just be there, just show up.
Yeah.
It's really interesting you mentioned the fear of judgment. And, you know, like I think you said like Fab Boy 25 or whatever. It's really true. And
Fat Boy
there's that
22.
22. Okay, sorry, 22. He's a little younger. He's a little angstier.
Yeah.
He hasn't quite hit his mid-20s yet. I love it. Yeah, it's really interesting though, because there's that whole trend now of I know at least Facebook and Instagram moving towards removing likes from the platform, and it's really interesting how that's going to affect, you know, the culture of social media, because like you said, it's going to remove part of that fear of not being liked, because you're not even going to, you know, be able to see who's getting however many likes. You know, I think you're still going to be able to see, you know, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you're a lot more in the marketing realm of social media than I am, but I think you're still going to be able to see how many likes you get, but like other people aren't. And I think that's going to be able to remove part of that fear aspect for creatives, and that, you know, like you still might be able to see, oh, I only got like, you know, however many likes on this picture, but like other people aren't going to be able to see that. So you can just put out whatever content you want, and you're still getting feedback, but you don't have to worry about other people saying, oh, like he only got, you know, like 100 likes on that picture instead of 500, like that content sucked, and, you know, whatever it is. I find that fascinating that we're kind of moving towards that, and I loved your input on that, and how, you know, the fear of judgment holds people back. I think that's too true.
Yeah. It's also, people think followers and likes are success. You know, if you're a business, your success is how much revenue and sales you generate. You can have 800 people following you, which, you know, compared to some people have millions, is not a lot. But yet, if you're making good money off of those following, you know, those are 800 customers or potential customers. Heck, man, you're going to do great. You know, so following and likes don't always equal success. I don't have a huge Instagram following. I know many of photographers that have a way bigger following than me, but yet lately I've been getting DMs about coming on my podcast, you know, being on a collaboration for a YouTube channel, adding me on LinkedIn. So it's, you know, you have to define your own success, and likes, like back to judgment, you know, are just not the success factor. They're just really not. And you can get brand deals even without the following. And I've seen it happen, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I think that reflects too, with what you were saying, how you can have like a certain number of followers or likes or whatever. And what's interesting for me too is just like how many people will like something without even really looking at it or watching. Like they'll scroll by a video, see the first second out of 30 seconds, like it, not even finish the video, and keep scrolling. And so it's such an inconsistent, you know, like piece of data analytics of feedback, of that you could get like 500 likes on a video and maybe like 50 people actually watched it all the way through. So there's, you know, there's no, that's just not a good reflection of how you're actually doing. Like you said, you know, the revenue, the DMs, the, hey, I want you on my podcast, like that's all, you know, the more important feedback. And, you know, I totally relate to that.
Yeah. It's, yeah, it's hard. It's hard, honestly, to get over that. It's not easy. I still do it. Like, you know, just last week, like I was kind of like in a rut. I was like, oh man, like I don't like this video. I literally just made, and my girlfriend's like, what are you talking about? Like, it looks amazing. Like, you're just being hard on yourself. You're like, yeah, you're right. And it happens to all of us. Like, we're not perfect human beings. We're all insecure in different ways, and we're all going to second guess. And the more you get into it, the more kind of critique you are about your own work. And this is also for businesses, not just creatives. You know, oh, the product's not right yet. The product's, like, you got to test it. You got to see what the market says, because the market will change. Your product could be zero today and then booming like toilet paper tomorrow. Like, you know, you do not know what the market is going to do. And so, yeah, like that's why you just got to always be testing, always got to be trying different things. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a good transition to the next question I wanted to ask you, Kyler, which is, when you get that client, if you wouldn't mind, walk us through your process a little bit. What what do you do personally to align yourself with their vision and to, you know, prepare yourself to adapt to what they're looking to do? You know, what's your process? What do you do to accomplish that?
Good question. Depending on the nature of the business, you know, I've done corporate jobs where it's very you spending all day on a shoot where you're doing interviews and many different people versus like hour shoots at restaurants and they just want a quick fix. So you have to understand the market that they're in. You know, are they looking for, you know, that quick turnaround, or is this a long-term engagement? Like, is this a business that I could really grow a relationship with? And you can't do it with all of them. Like sometimes they're just transactional. Sometimes like I need photos this weekend, come Saturday night. Okay, I'm there. You know, and it's very transactional. How many photos do you need? This is my price. Versus the flip side where you're trying to build a long-term relationship and engagement with them. Maybe they're a B2B type business or a software company, and you can really you know, grow a relationship there. You got to understand their market. You got to understand what their needs are. And the biggest thing is I find that creatives have a hard time pricing themselves.
Oh my gosh.
It's
Yes.
it's really hard. And listen, I don't have the right answer. I'm not saying I have this voodoo magic that makes it the right answer, but what you do have to do is re-engineer the value you're bringing. So if you if their goal is they want to increase sales, okay, they want to increase leads. Sorry, they want to increase leads. They want to get 10 more leads a month or something, right? There's your success factor. There's your goal. Okay. And when you're looking back at the project, you have to make sure that the potential outcome of this video advertisement, as an example, you know, will get you X more than that. Like, oh, okay, I've done this in the past. Normally I'm good at gains in 20 leads, you know, so I'm pretty sure I can get them 10. You know, you have to teach them the value of that video. If Mr. Customer, how much sales can you drive from those 10 leads? Oh, I can close 5 of them. Okay, how much sales? Let's say $100 each. Just make math simple. So there's $500, right? Well, my video is, you know, I'm using simple math. So my video is only $250. Isn't that an ROI on your investment? If I can make you $250 more, right? So by re-engineering what the goal is, I want 10 leads. You know, and I'm normally good at getting 20 leads, but I'm aiming for 10, and he can close 5, and I'm only charging $250. Well, the math is simple. The guy's going to go with you, right? So you have to, you know, you're creative, but you are in business. You're selling a service. So you have to be educated in how you really demonstrate the value of your product or your service. So my video can get you these 10 leads, and I've done it so in the past, and you can look at these references for that. So it's really just engineering that. And I've been taking that. I have a gig this weekend with a restaurant, and they were not interested in who I was or me getting to know them at all. They just want photographer. Their photographer bailed, and I heard you're a good guy. Cool. All right, here's my price, because they're not interested, right? And so I'm not going to beat the horse down if they're not going to listen to me. So it's about being effective with your time too. So yeah, just re-engineer who they are. If this is a business that wants to sit down, have a coffee with you, get to know you, and actually have a long-term, and there are businesses, lots of businesses like that, right? That's the business I work for. You know, I sat down, had a coffee with the guy, explained my story. Coming from Vancouver, I had this dream, being a photographer. You know, I think you're awesome. I think we could be great. And he gave me a chance, and now I'm here, you know, so it happens. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And you actually touched on one of the other major things that I wanted to talk to you about. I feel like there's like 2 other things I really wanted to get your thoughts on. And the first thing, it's such a stereotype, but it's such a problem too when it comes to the industry, is creatives as a whole do not know how to market themselves, and they don't know how to actually value their work, their craft, and their time spent on that. I would love to hear just your thoughts on that, if you wouldn't mind elaborating on that just a little bit, because that is such a huge thing when it comes to creatives across the
It's a little weird. Like when you're doing an ad on yourself, you know, and you're editing your own videos. I don't know about you guys, but it kind of feels like, man, am I really pumping my own tires right now? Am I really conceited by doing this? I don't know. like, oh, should I do this? But the fact is, I am the face of my brand. My brand is me. I am wearing this hat that has a camera. I have a
I love
beard,
it.
and thank you. And this is my brand. So I'm gonna own it. If you look at guys like Q on LinkedIn, who's very popular, he wears all black, like black clothes. He has that like brim hat, and that's his brand. Whenever you see that, if I ever go to, I forget where he is in the States, but if I ever go where he's at, I'm gonna know that's him, right? And that's what's great about branding, is that you're making yourself look different. You're being your authentic self. So marketing yourself, although sometimes it might feel a little weird, if you want your face to be the brand, let it be the brand. Now you could also go with a logo. You can go with like your cartoon character of yourself or something. Like, doesn't matter which way you go. There's no pros and cons. It just depends on what you yourself want. And if you're not comfortable in front of a camera, I'm not going to say go in front of a camera, right? You can do a podcast, audio podcast, have a logo as your picture, if you're not as handsome and charming as me, so it's, so are you wanting to know more about like pricing, like to me
Yes,
elaborate
yeah.
on
Like
that?
specifically, like, yeah, like people do work for so cheap. And I think a lot of times it's because they don't know what their actual work is worth. And I think
Hmm.
that, that value aspect there is a very big problem right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you said creatives don't know how to price themselves, I could tell Chris got triggered.
In a good way, because it's true. Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure this out, and there's no right way. That's the thing, right? There's no playbook that says this is how you price yourself. You can look up Peter McKinnon. He has a pretty like cool video about it, right? But the best video, and I forget the guy who said this, but he really made it like he was talking it as a business perspective. If you're delivering a product that's going to produce XYZ outcome, you have to show them the math. And maybe because I'm a salesman, I have 6-7 years, I'm used to this. I go through a step-by-step process where, Mr. Customer, you're going to invest $1 million in this platform, but you're going to gain $5 million. You're going to save $5 million in productivity within your employees, within your clients, within this, and you show them the math, right? So if you could figure out the math, you can sell anything. If you can show them that, listen, you are going to get a ROI on this investment, because I have projects from $250 to 10 grand, right? So it's hard to kind of say like, what's the pricing structure? And earlier I was giving a simple kind of math to do in my head, but it's hard on the fly, like you have to understand that these guys are business owners. These guys run on numbers. So if you can make the math work to them, and I don't mean fake it, like do some voodoo magic. I just mean literally lay it out. Like, how much do I need to be paid an hour in order to make a living or in order to sustain a living? Okay, I can, like, the bare minimum is this, but my goal is over here. Okay. Well, your first few clients, I worked for free. I worked for free for 6 months. I worked for many different businesses, got $0. But now my ROI on that investment is positive, right? So it's hard to determine, the investment there, because you're buying a house. You don't expect an investment in the first year. You're going to ROI in 5, 6, 10 years, maybe even 40 years, so it really is, you have to do the math for them. I hope that answers your question. If we can get more detailed, I can write it out on a piece of paper and say, okay, it costs this, but I find it so hard from a big perspective, right? Because so many people in so many different fields with different prices, but that was the biggest thing that I found, honestly, was that I showed them how it would work. I said, listen, I believe I can get you these 10 leads. And if I did, and you close 5 of them, you're going to be in pocket $500. So my 250 doesn't seem that bad anymore, and then your conversations are easy. And then you just have a great relationship, and then they see the value, right? Because if you make this kind of, oh, it's pretty, and you use all this technical jargon, they're going to go over their head. Right? You have to speak business to them because you are a business. And, if you don't know how, I'll recommend some videos you can watch. Honestly, it was a 10-minute video I think I watched.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know we only have a couple minutes, and just to respond to that, I think the bottom line is it does vary on your ability, it does vary on your industry and your clientele. But the bottom line, no matter who you are and what you do, is you need to value your time and your craft, and you need to market it as such. And I think that's really, that's the bottom
Perfect.
line with that.
I should have just
And
said
and I
that,
think
man.
no, I loved what you said. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
That was great. The last thing that I really, want to touch on just in these last couple minutes here, one of the biggest difficulties out there with creatives across the board, that what we just talked about was one, but the other one I can think of is subjectivity versus objectivity when it comes to content production. What is objectively good as design or, photography and videography, and what is your opinion, and your opinion is not objectively a good idea, like what that whole awkward balance of what's actually good and what's just your opinion, and how do you respond to that, how do you deal with that as a creative?
Yeah, that's a good question. So are you guys baseball, basketball, football fans? What? Will help with the answer.
Yes, I love sports.
Which one's your favorite? Pick one.
Soccer's my favorite, but out of those ones I'd say basketball.
So if soccer is your favorite, no, we'll go soccer. Mine's football. I play rugby. So it's hard to determine, like, sports is something we all do, right? We're all creative. We all watch it. And you watch soccer, I watch football. How do I say that football is better than soccer? You could look at stats. You could look at numbers of people that follow it. But there's no way in hell you're going to win this argument that soccer is better than football. Now, you see where I'm going with this? That it's you can't say it's all opinions. What I think is good content, and what I think is like, that's a good piece of art, that's a great video, is someone else's trash, someone else's ugh. Because we all have different interests. If you're into basketball, okay, then you can have a good conversation about whether, Michael Jordan's like free throw numbers and passes and all that kind of stuff. You can determine more what kind of high quality is by the numbers, but really quality changes. On Instagram right now, people are showing how they edit videos, like the behind the scenes, more raw. Now the raw, it's just a trend. Now on TikTok, there's people are filming on their camera phone, so they're not high quality video, but yet these people are becoming, have followings of billions of people following them, right, from their phone. So how do I say that's good content? That dancing is good content on TikTok. It's different for everybody. There's no right answer. And people can throw at me like different things, but I have different interests. I like football. I don't like race car driving. My friends like race car driving. They follow accounts about race car driving. I really don't know why, but I follow things like photography and inspiration and self-development, and we all find quality different. We all geek out on different things. Some people like video games, some people don't. What's your take on NHL 2019 versus 2020? Those specifics you can get a little bit more, have a debate with, but in overall, what makes good content, it's whatever your audience says makes good content. If I create a piece of post, if I create content today that gets great engagement, and I could create it tomorrow and it gets zero engagement. And that's the market. That's the audience, because things change every single day. Your previous data is going to be, it's almost unusable as of today, in my opinion. Right? Because, and I have it all the time. Like I had this trend, like this graphic that I made that I've been doing for months and has been getting great engagement, and now it's slowly dipping. So now people are, sick of seeing it. Right? Now I got to think of a brand new idea. So quality is really what your audience says it is, and it's going to change every single day. You can do a TikTok dance today that goes viral, and the same TikTok dance tomorrow, and it won't get crap. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's a very realistic, down-to-earth answer, and I think it's very relatable. So the very last question before we have to wrap up here, just really quick, yes or no. Have you seen the video with Peter McKinnon and Gary Vee yet?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Gary had Peter come in, and Peter did a vlog with Gary, and Peter was like all nervous. He's like, I'm interviewing Gary Vee. It was really funny.
Oh
It's
my
definitely
God.
recommend it. It's on YouTube, all that stuff.
I have not seen
Gary,
it. I'm gonna
Gary, Brian,
watch it.
Peter.
I have a meeting in half an hour. I gotta
Yeah.
prepare for it. Okay, after that meeting, I'll watch that video.
It's funny.
Oh
That's
man, now
awesome.
you're distracted.
Thanks,
it's
Chris. Oh man.
Leave it to me, right?
Yeah,
No, it's definitely
no.
worth it.
Awesome. No, I will definitely check it out. Thank you for saying that, because those two guys are the guys I watch the most,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Peter and Casey Neistat also got together. I think it was in like the Netherlands or something, and like he was
I
like
saw it.
doing a vlog with Casey.
Yeah. That's cool. That's
they,
cool.
they all hang out. They all know each other. They're all bros.
Yeah.
So.
Dream come true. You know, it's goals, right? Goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One day.
Honestly, the maybe the last thing I'll just quickly say is that, like, if you're starting to be, if you want to be a creative, if you're starting out or you want to hire a creative, like, honestly, your first 100 pieces of work is not going to be your best. And my next 100 pieces of work is not going to be my best. Every single day I'm learning new things. I'm improving my skill every single day. What I know right now and the work I did today, I did not know 2 months ago, and it would have helped me 2 months ago. So every single day that you work on it, you're just going to get better. So don't sweat that your first picture that you post is not going to be 1 million likes. Be happy you get one. Be happy that one person out there it likes your work. And that's all I try. As long as I can impact somebody with my work, I'm happy. And I try to remind myself that every single day. And that's in business, that's in, creativity, photography, videography, whatever. That's what I have to say.
Well said. I love it. Kyler Miles, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. We really enjoyed having you. It means a lot for you to be on here. I know I learned a lot. Definitely it was very enjoyable. So thank you so much. For all of our listeners and viewers, definitely check out his content. We're going to be dropping links for all of that stuff. So definitely make sure to follow him. He has great stuff. I'm a big fan, and definitely encourage you all to follow him. So for all of our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you next time.